This podcast is sponsored by the Tollington Arms on Hornsey Road, a bubbly pub with a Thai kitchen home to thousands of Arsenal fans every season. Open daily from noon.
So hello everyone and welcome back to the Gooner Ramble. This is Rick hosting Akhil as usual, and we have a few special guests to discuss Arsenal over this Arsblog named interlull period. And hopefully Akhil can keep up. He's a little bit hungover today. I think beyond the JDs he got into some Jaeger. Is that right?
Yeah. It wasn't pretty. I mean, I think I'm all right now. I think I'm over the worst of it. This morning wasn't pretty, and my wife got me hoovering the whole house, and oh my god, it took me about 3 hours to do. But and our house isn't that big. It should take about 15-20 minutes, but yeah, life was a struggle.
All right, very good. So, as by way of introduction, Chloe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a member of the AST. I'm an Arsenal season ticket holder and have been going to watch them for nearly 30 years, which is quite a scary prospect.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Well, welcome to the pod. And Massimo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, mate. I'm a journalist at CNN. Used to be a sports editor for a host of British newspaper titles, and a lifelong Arsenal fan.
All right, very good.
That's actually where I met you, wasn't it? I think I met you at the Mirror.
It was. We met at the Mirror, yeah. Well, I was just starting out.
Yeah, about 10, 12 years ago it was now. Oh.
God, don't say that.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's showing our
You're
age.
still on the JDs and I've been doing gardening today, so that shows how our lives vary.
Yeah. To be fair, it's not. This used to be a weekly, daily occurrence, but actually now it's like, yeah, I just can't do it. Can't do it. One night out ruins the weekend. But I hate to think if we win that North London derby in a few weeks, what that Monday morning looks like. Yeah.
It's going to be painful.
I might just book the day off actually and be away. Sorry, Rick.
That's all right. Mondays aren't a big loss, so live it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, again, we don't have specific games to talk about, so we'll just kick it off by talking about our current form, some players, some position competitions, things like that. So, current form, I guess, is our first topic, and I know we've seen some promising performances, and then we've seen some disappointing draws. But thankfully, we haven't had a loss in a while. Akhil, I'll let you kick this off with the form to date for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I got asked this actually the other day on sort of another show, and it was, if you take away that sort of Wolves game, you probably think actually, it's kind of been the perfect start apart from those first two games. I think the Wolves game potentially clouds it a little bit because it was the last game, but I mean, generally, I don't think we can have too many complaints. I think the 4 draws in a row maybe is a little bit of a concern because we've just slightly lacked goals a little bit in the last game or two. So I think we just need to get back on that horse and just start scoring again. So I'm convinced that as long as we do that, we'll probably win football games. So, the first half of games is a little bit of a concern now. I think it's going on a little bit too long. But I mean, generally, I don't think we can complain, but we certainly have to kick on. And I think the next kind of 3-4 are going to be really key. Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, Man United away. We've also got the League Cup kind of quarter, towards the end of December. So certainly now to the end of December, so the rest of the year is going to be quite key. And let's hope we can kind of push on. I think it's always quite telling that at the start of the season, we looked at the season and thought, you know what, it's probably a free ride for Unai Emery this year. It's probably as long as we're not sort of 8th or 9th, it's generally we'll see how it goes. We'll give him a season to get going. And it's probably next season where we want to get back in the top 4 and things like that. But it's kind of changed. We're looking at it and thinking, actually, we probably can get the top 4 this year. So our expectations have changed. And that kind of highlights how positive the start has been for me. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. And I think we're well on course. It depends on how others do. But generally, we're in a good place.
I think so. Again, we're coming off that disappointing draw, so I guess everybody's mood's a little clouded. And our lackadaisical starts to the games, I think that was the first game we saw it affect both halves. Usually second half improvement, but yeah. So next we'll go with Massimo. Given that what you've seen thus far, and looking ahead to December, where I think the fixtures come thick and fast, what is your assessment of how we look so far?
I agree with Akhil to an extent. I think if you look at it purely results-wise and points-wise, where we are on the table, you can't really expect much better. You know, we are ahead of United by a good amount, and we're in and around, you know, the top of the table, which is probably more than any of us really expected at the start of the season. I would add a massive but to that. In the sense that we have ridden our luck, I think, in the games that I've seen. We probably should have been a couple of goals down in almost every game I've seen, including the game against Fulham, where we eventually, you know, ran out comfortable winners. On another day, we could be fighting back from 2 goals down within 20, 30 minutes, pretty much in every game I've seen. So, you know, we've got to cut out those first half, lapses in concentration and try to get ourselves going a bit more. But I think, you know, from what I've seen, we seem to be running more. We seem to be slightly fitter, which may have its implications going, you know, through the rest of the season, but he seems to be rotating well enough in the UEFA Cup and, in the League Cup. So giving everyone a run out. So yeah, I think that there's plenty of reason to be encouraged, but also cause for concern as well. I think the last few games we've had, before we had them, I sort of looked at the game against Palace away, Liverpool at home, Wolves at home, and Bournemouth away as, you know, 4 games which would probably tell us a lot about where we were. I thought a team really who have turned a corner should be expecting to get probably 9 or at least 7 points from those 4 games. 7 points. It looks like I think the max we can probably take is 6, and we'll probably be quite fortunate to do that because Bournemouth are looking really sharp. I think that game away will really be a marker of where we are, because that is certainly a game we would have lost last season.
Okay, very good, very good. And Chloe, what might the gentlemen here all be missing that you can fill us in on what you've seen, as well as maybe any insights you might have to the slow starts that we've typically had? As Massimo said, we've been riding a little bit of luck.
Oh, we're definitely riding our luck, but I think it's also really important to realise that there is a confidence there. And I think if any of us had, at the beginning of the season, been told at this point in the campaign, in terms of the games that we had, you know, we'd be in 5th place, I think we would have all been extremely surprised. And although it has been really frustrating, particularly over more recent weeks, I think we are seeing some great flourishes, and ultimately we are grinding out those results. So games that previously perhaps we would have dropped off last year, and we would have been in that really frustrating position where we could have won but we didn't. It feels that even when we do go behind, you know, first, we are then just getting on with it. We're not dropping our heads. We're staying disciplined. We're being organised, and we're just really going for it. And I think that is really, really important. And a key part of that for me as well is the fans. And certainly the Liverpool game was one of the most intense, exciting atmospheres I've been in at the Emirates in a very, very long time. It felt like a fortress. Everyone was behind the team. Everyone was really, you know, pushing for us to do really, really well. And I think that helped. And I think if we can also keep that momentum going as fans and as a crowd, I think that will also have a really positive impact. And we're coming up to that pre-Christmas bit, which is always a time of season that we can look a bit shaky. It's not going to be easy. When you think we've got, you know, Spurs, got the Man United game, then as you say, we've got the Cup game. It's not going to be easy, but I am genuinely optimistic. You know, we can do what we need to do and keep picking up points and just keep pushing forwards.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, sorry.
Just clarify, I mean, yeah, I I meant more from a point situation than a performance. I mean, I think of Everton, Watford, we were probably, and even Wolves, we could have easily lost all of those games. But I think there's just that Liverpool game that Chloe mentions was a big sign. I thought that even when James Milner scored and we were 1 down, I still felt that we're not going to lose this. We're going to get back into it. And I kind of, against Wolves, felt the same, even though at the end they probably should have won it. But generally, I think there is a level of confidence there, and you don't feel like you're going to lose games, which I don't know, it's a weird feeling. It's natural, it just happens. You don't think about it too much until you're in that position when you're a goal down. Maybe it's because it's happened so much, but I mean, generally, I think, performances would have to improve, and, there's lots to work on, start of the games and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of, matches played, where we are, I think we're in a great position. I mean, Barcelona are top of the Spanish league. Their record is played 12. They've won 7 of those 12. They've drawn 3 and they've lost 2. That gives them 24 points, and they're top of the Spanish league. That is the identical record to Arsenal. The identical. So, it kind of highlights the Premier League and obviously the league in Spain. But points wise and results wise, we're not doing bad at all.
Yeah, it's always good that our disappointments at least are coming from draws, not losses. So I guess that's a good part. With the fixtures coming up really, really rapidly here in December, there's obviously going to be some rotation. And one of the things we don't think about in our rotation, but might be coming up for us, is given the return of Petr Cech, we have a goalkeeping dilemma. We have 2 goalkeepers that, Cech was looking really good prior to his injury. Leno has come on and looked really good as well. We'll start with Chloe here. In looking at the goalkeepers, do you have a preference, or do you have any idea what we should be doing?
I do have a preference because I think Leno's been playing really, really well. And I actually think that the Wolves result could have been quite different if he hadn't been in goal. And whilst Cech has been, a fantastic player for us overall, I think that almost naturally the circumstances have come about that now is Leno's time, and to let him keep his place, and to have him there, as first choice. I'd really, really like to see that opportunity, because ultimately, we want to make sure that we're in the strongest position, and I just feel that at the point where Cech is, going to be out of contract come the end of this season, and therefore, if he wants to continue playing and being a number 1 goalkeeper, he won't necessarily be able to do it with us, which obviously would change things overall. That we've got a chance now just to let Leno have that opportunity, show us what he can really do, and I'd really like to see that happen.
Okay, and Massimo, do you agree with that assessment, or how do you think they should be used throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, I do agree. I think Emery did the right thing at the start of the season by sticking with Cech and making Leno earn his spot rather than just giving it to the new guy, the shiny new signing. And I think Cech repaid that faith, to be honest. Yeah. I think he was in great form before his injury. However, I think the injury was a blessing in disguise, not a blessing in disguise, but it came at the right time where Leno could step up. And he has done really well, bar a few sort of mistimed charges for crosses, most notably against Liverpool. As Chloe says, he was fantastic against Wolves. We would have undoubtedly lost if it wasn't for him. And he's the future. It goes without saying, he is the guy who we want, or who should be in the starting lineup going forward. And he needs to be given that time to bed in. I'm sure Cech will still get games, whether that be in the UEFA Cup, the FA Cup, the League Cup. So there's still plenty of games for both, but it should be Leno's time now, and I'm happy to see him given that chance.
Okay, yeah, a lot of love for Leno. Akhil, do you think we should just name him number 1 now?
Yeah, I think he is. I think the Wolves game was a big one. Both fit, both have had games. Leno started. I think it will take now a bit of an era. A big era now, I think, for Leno to kind of lose his place. Cech was unlucky that, when he got injured, that's when he lost his place. But that's happened before, Wojciech Szczesny was number 1 and got injured, I think, away to Tottenham, and Ospina came in, done well, kept his place for the rest of the season. So that can happen in goal. You know, you generally don't want to kind of drop a goalkeeper when they're doing well, and certainly when they're keeping clean sheets, and you're not losing games. I think he still has to improve, and we at the AST had the we had Bob Wilson with us. We had the honour of having Bob Wilson with us last Monday, and kind of we were talking about the goalkeepers, and he said that Leno is an absolute fantastic shot stopper that he showed, but he needs to improve when he comes up for crosses. He needs to really command that area. And according to Bob Wilson, nobody does that better in the league than Czech, in terms of the commanding that area. And I think Leno has gone walkies a couple of times. It hasn't cost us, but it could. So I still think he's got work to do. It took David De Gea quite a while to kind of settle in. Took him a season as well. So I think Leno's ahead of that. But at the moment, I can't see him being dropped. I mean, we will have, ironically, one of the most exciting games will be that League Cup quarter-final where Czech will probably play. So actually, you could argue he's going to have one of the probably best atmospheres in the next kind of 6 weeks. So, there'll be games. He'll play in the 2 Europa League games as well. So there's a few games he'll play, but I think Leno will be number one for a while.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously there's going to have to be a little bit of rotation given how quick these games come up, but it's good to have two good goalkeepers. Speaking of people out of contract at the end of the year, we already know that Ramsey is not going to be offered a new contract. Danny Welbeck, has injured himself quite badly, and he's out of contract at the end of the season as well, Akhil. What are your thoughts on how Arsenal are going to deal with Danny?
Yeah, that's quite interesting as well, because I was reading something about there was a piece. I think David Ornstein was on the Arscast. Ironically, you mentioned Arsblog in your introduction, and he was talking that he actually feels Arsenal are going to talk to Danny Welbeck. Up till now, there hasn't been any kind of contract on the table, but Arsenal apparently do rate Danny Welbeck quite highly. So I think there might be some talks there. I think the terms have to be kind of right. I don't think Danny Welbeck can expect like a massive pay rise or anything like that. But what happened to him was so unfortunate. He's the sort of player who gives you absolutely 100%, and actually has looked quite good when he's played. I think recently we talk about can Aubameyang and Lacazette play together. Well, at Fulham, Welbeck and Lacazette actually looked really good. The way Welbeck played, he kind of was playing quite close to Lacazette, and it worked. So yeah, I think it's a really, really unfortunate time for Danny Welbeck to get injured with Christmas coming. Those kind of games, you have a lot of games at that point in time. So it's a massive blow, but it will be interesting to see if we offer him any sort of an extension.
Yeah, I know it is a bad time for him to be injured, because with all the games we have coming up in December, we can certainly use him. But Massimo, as far as Welbeck's contract, Ramsey's contract, what do you think Arsenal should do, or what do you think they've already missed when it comes to tying up these contracts?
I love Welbs, and as Akhil said, he'll give his all for you, and he has had a few games where he's been really effective, and there probably is a bit part role for him. But let's be honest, he is not anywhere near an elite striker or an elite player, really. The kind of player that we should be focusing on and putting money into. It kills me to say, because, he's got everything probably that you want him to have, but I just don't think he's ever going to do it for us. The same way that he was never really going to do it at United, and they cut their losses on him as well. So, it's very sad. And as I said, if we could keep him around for half his wage, then of course. But he's probably on a good whack of money, and he's a player who I don't think we'll have much trouble replacing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we're going to spend some money on something, we should probably get an upgrade, somebody who's a nailed-on starter, rather than squad players are important, but usually you hope to get that out of youth, in my opinion, anyway.
And that's what I meant by the terms have to be right, and I meant the terms have to be right for Arsenal. Because he could be out for the rest of the season. It might take him a while to come back. Are you better investing that money elsewhere? I don't know. It looks like Arsenal aren't going to be sentimental anymore. Santi Cazorla, Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey kind of highlights that. Olivier Giroud, Theo Walcott highlights that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think, terms have to be right.
I think also if you look at who would take him as well. I mean, would a top 10 would a top 10 club come in for him? Like certainly not top 6. So that goes without saying. No top 6 club is going to come in for him. And then you've got to start looking at the rest of the top 10 really. I mean, would he get in the Bournemouth team? Would he get in the Everton team?
Probably not.
Probably not. So at that
like
point,
Newcastle. Maybe.
Well, exactly. Newcastle, like they're relegation candidates this year. So you've got to start looking at it in that terms as well, and thinking, is this the guy we really want to put, 100 odd grand into a week? And unfortunately, the answer is no for me.
I mean, you really feel for him. I mean, an injury when you're kind of out of contract in the summer is just the absolute nightmare situation, because even a Newcastle are not going to want to invest 80,000-90,000 into a player like that who they don't know how he'll be after the injury. It's a really unfortunate time.
I think you're right about that lack of sentimentality though, because there's definitely an air about the club. We saw it with Jack going. Definitely has been more ruthless perhaps with how they've dealt with Aaron Ramsey, and I think it's the same with Welbeck. If he's not going to have a really strong, robust role to play, then he will be off to another club. I think it's fair to say at the end of the season.
Okay. Another lineup dilemma, oft debated, and that's who to start in the center of defense. Socrates got an injury and hasn't really reestablished his place in the lineup since then. We'll stick with Chloe for a moment. What is your preferred? I mean, I have a preferred lineup at center back, but what is yours? What do you think we should be doing?
So I really think that Rob Holding's coming to the fore, and I'd just like to see him keep playing. His recent form has been really, really strong. He's put in a good run of performances in the games that he's been playing, and when you think about how he performed against Liverpool, he was absolutely brilliant. And I think that he's a young player, and if we give him that chance, we give him that opportunity, and we invest in him, and he can build his confidence. And I really would like to see him still being considered.
Who do you put next to him?
So I think that I am becoming a bit more of a fan of Mustafi, if I'm honest. I think that he has his moments, but I do think that we started to see a bit more consistency from him. And I, again, would like to just see us letting that play out, and, give that opportunity for a few stable starts, and I've got the confidence that they'll deliver.
Okay. Massimo, your preferred pairing in the center defense?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because on one hand, I agree with Chloe and want to see Holding getting games, building his confidence, because he's certainly the future. On the other hand, I was surprised to see Socrates be dropped so quickly. I thought he was really impressive before his injury, and I think he was brought in precisely to give that sort of stable leadership that our defence has desperately been missing. Rob Holding has done fantastically in his absence, but I was surprised, because I thought once he was back, he would be the mainstay of defence, and other guys would go around him. I would like to see him back in the team, to be honest. Whether that's in place of Mustafi or Holding, that's probably very much up to form. But yeah, I'd like to see him come back pretty sooner rather than later, to be honest.
Right. I think you're spot on. He was one of those players that he got better every time you saw him. So starting the season, you thought, I'm not sure about him, but then he was playing, to be fair, against City and Chelsea. So I mean, should you judge anyone against City and Chelsea like that? So but I thought he got better and better after every game. He was a lot quicker than I initially thought. He was good on the ball. He was a bit of a leader. So yeah, I was I really like Rob Holding, and I've loved Rob since that kind of Chelsea FA Cup final when he played alongside her and that show, and he was just fantastic, and the way he kept Costa quiet, and I love that he had that bite, when he kind of said to Costa, you're effing crazy sort of thing, and he pointing to his head, and I loved all that. But there's something that says that can Rob Holding survive the whole season playing. I'm not sure yet. So I do, Unai Emery, I do like his way he rotates as well. Everyone, you've seen pretty much every player play their part. And so with the Socrates thing, I think, I expect to see him a little bit more. I don't know when, I don't know what sort of games, but I'll be surprised if we don't. Mustafi, Mustafi's been one of those real, you kind of, people say Mustafi, I just smile. I just think he's kind of one of those where a centre-back, you don't want to notice a centre-back, but you notice Mustafi because he's always just, slipping over or doing what he did against Fulham and diving in or just doing something stupid. But in the middle, there was a few games where you didn't notice Mustafi and you thought, actually, I'm coming away from a game and not criticising Mustafi. He must have done all right. And we won the game, so that helped. So I think Mustafi has improved. He was actually in the Sky Sports Team of the Year, to date, the team that they've done on the opening kind of couple of months of the season. So it's I feel he's earned his chance and his chance to stay in the team. I don't think you could remove him at the moment because I think that would be the wrong message as well. Because he's obviously worked hard, but I think with the other two, I think it's up for grabs. Laurent Koscielny will potentially also come back into the fold. Because we do need him to come back. Mavropanos has been injured for a while. Callum James is obviously on loan. So you do need Laurent Koscielny to come in. Potentially you might see him against Spurs. What a game that would be if he comes back there. More likely in the Europa League, I guess. But, it's good that we've actually got players there who we're having this conversation with so many times for years, in the last few years, we know who we want there and that's it kind of thing. But the fact that we've got these debates, that shows that actually it's a lot more competitive there, and that's only a good thing.
Yeah, I love the fact that we have to debate. I often call Mustafi the master of the spectacular. It's either a spectacular tackle or a spectacularly boneheaded move.
Yeah,
he does both.
I'll tell you what, when we play kind of Spurs, I'm put Mustafi on Kane, and I feel quite confident Mustafi will do a good job. I think he's really good at sort of getting someone out the game kind of thing. It's just that prone, that error. It's just that you just feel it's always coming or it's gonna come.
Exciting and terrifying in equal measure is probably the way to describe it.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, okay. Another place where debates are endless are Lacazette and Aubameyang. Let's go back to Massimo on this one. As far as getting both of these players on the pitch at the same time and how they can help the team succeed, what are your thoughts? Do you play them both or do you not?
Well, I think I, like everyone else, would love to see them both. And I think it's hard to justify 250 million plus strikers without, playing them both. But what's become clear early on is that, Emery sort of favours a one-up top system, which for a start, I don't think Aubameyang can really play particularly well in the Premier League from what I've seen. And he's not really a left-sided winger either. So I think that's where the difficulty comes in, really. We'd all love to see them. We all know there's goals in them. And it's a case of, do you kind of sacrifice that defensive aspect of having a kind of left-sided winger / forward who, can't really cover the fullback that well, but is an attacking threat and probably a rare attacking threat from our midfield, because that's, I think, one of the big sort of flaws in our team, that we don't have a lot of goals coming from midfield. Having him out wide as one of those is a massive option, and we've seen that, him come on to great effect, in that role. But, I'm not really sure how it's going to get on against the top teams and the games which really sort of define our seasons. Didn't really work out against Wolves. I know he scored against Palace, but I don't really think he affected that game as much as you'd hoped he would. I don't think the future's probably bright for that particular, the way we're playing it at the moment. Put it like that. If we play with two up front, maybe, but it doesn't seem like Emery wants to do that.
Yeah. Chloe, do you play them both as well, or when there's only one to choose from, it seems that Emery has chosen Lacazette. It sounds like Massimo agrees. Do you have any thoughts on this striker dilemma?
So I was really excited about the thought of them playing together because what they'd achieved individually, in the thought of having that as our strike force, on paper, it should be absolutely amazing. But I have to agree with, a lot of what you've said, Massimo, because it just doesn't seem to be working, which is frustrating. And I think part of it, as we say, is because of, the way that Emery prefers to play. And ultimately, we have got to make sure that we're absolutely utilising the squad as fully as possible to put ourselves in the best position. So even though having them both on the pitch should mean more firepower, ultimately, if that's going to affect the overall formation and tactics and strategy that Emery wants to use, then there's probably got to be a sacrifice. And he's definitely favouring Lacazette. He's had 5 goals, hasn't he, across 12 Premier League matches, I think it is. So actually, Aubameyang scored a couple more goals than him. But I just feel more recently, in particular, that we're more likely to score with Lacazette on the pitch. I think he just seems a bit stronger and a bit more of a dead cert. Well, I absolutely love watching Aubameyang play, and obviously he was awesome against Leicester. But I just think that if you had to make a decision in the short term, I'd go with Laka.
I think it's been interesting. Yeah, it's been interesting because actually last season when Aubameyang came, he was scoring. He was scoring in. But I think he pretty much
unstoppable.
He had a goal to game kind of record under Arsene Wenger at the end, and he was playing slightly more central with Lacazette a little bit wider when they both played, and Aubameyang was scoring, and it was working for Aubameyang, but not particularly Lacazette. And then start of the season, I think Aubameyang was the first choice for Unai Emery until that Cardiff game, where there was calls for them both to play together. So if you remember, Lacazette started the season on the bench. There was calls for them to play together. It finally happened, and at Cardiff, they both scored. But actually, Lacazette was the one who had the better game, in my opinion, and he started centrally. He scored that absolute great winner. And since then, Lacazette hasn't really looked back, and Aubameyang has obviously been shifted out wide to accommodate. But it hasn't really worked for them. They obviously get on off the field, and we've seen all their videos and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're both desperate to do well together, but it's just not happening. And I think actually we talked about Danny Welbeck a little bit, but when Welbeck started at Fulham, he was playing a lot closer to Lacazette, and you felt it worked. Iwobi then could kind of use the space on the left, and Monreal as well on the overlap, and it just looked a lot more fluid. Whereas when Aubameyang's there, it just doesn't quite look like that, and Aubameyang's he's not really participating much when he plays out there. He may get a goal or two, but in terms of general play, he's not really participating. And it was very kind of, when we were 1-0 down against Liverpool and Unai Emery took Aubameyang off, you were wondering, wow, that's a bold statement. But the goal comes from Danny Welbeck, again, being closer to Lacazette positionally. They both made the same run, which means the centre-back was he was kind of on his toes, but he wasn't on the half turn, and he probably saw Welbeck and Lacazette had gone through, and then obviously the rest is history. So I think, yeah, we need to find a way where they're playing closer together, positionally, because I think that's the key. But at the moment, I think Lacazette's there. I think the only times where it's looked good has been when Aubameyang has come off the bench against Fulham and against Leicester, where he scored the goal. So, yeah, I think at the moment you can't drop Lacazette. But we need to really work out. Well, we've got 2 strikers there who can score 20 goals, and as Massimo says, the goals from midfield have slightly dried off. We're not going to see Aaron Ramsey much, so there's goals there. Ozil can be he's in and out a little bit with goals. Iwobi, Mkhitaryan, not quite sure how much they'll kind of give you. So, we are desperate for 20 goals from Lacazette, 20 goals from Aubameyang, and the rest then pitch in. So at the moment, it's okay. But yes, that will be Unai Emery's focus. That will be giving him sleepless nights.
Yeah. And I still got a lot of confidence in Aubameyang. So, I wouldn't mind if they just, he sat one or the other, alternated them for any given reason and just brought the other one on, for the last 20 minutes, right?
He might have to.
Yeah. All right. So, it's not really a rumor. It pops up every couple of years, but there's been a lot of discussion recently, about a European Super League. I'll stick with you, Akhil, on this one. What are your thoughts on the creation of and Arsenal's potential participation in a European Super League?
It's not for fans. I mean, I don't think fans want it. I mean, obviously I can only speak for myself, and I'm sure Chloe and Massimo will give you their opinion in a second. It seems like a lot of it's being done in secret. There's been conversations kind of going on. I mean, Raul has said recently that Arsenal have been part of the conversations, but Vinay's come out and said that that doesn't mean Arsenal want to be a part of the Super League. It just means that they want to be involved in the talks that are going to impact on their future. So it is interesting. I mean, it would totally kill the Premier League. For people that don't know how it would work, I guess it would just be the top clubs from every country would then have their own league. So, in terms of fans and all that kind of stuff, it will be very difficult.
Well, some people say it might just replace the Champions League competition and not impact domestic leagues.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure, because then what's the point? I think that conversation, it's a lot easier conversation. So, this talks about no kind of relegation and no promotion kind of thing. So it's very different. But I mean, I think if it was to replace something like that, they would want to play them on the weekends. So that's kind of your difference there, that, would then league games be played in the week? And if so, that's going to massively interfere with supporters and things like that. So it certainly isn't for me. It's interesting to see kind of what clubs say. I think, it's a case where the English clubs need to really speak to each other. They need to, make up some sort of a pact or something that, they don't all go. Because I think, we're certainly going to bring this up with Arsenal and stuff like that, and hopefully we'll look for a bit of a commitment from Arsenal. But, it's difficult, because if suddenly 4 of the other top 6 clubs say they're going to go, you're in a real position there. So I think every English club needs to the top English clubs need to just agree what they're going to do. Because no European Super League would be successful if there isn't any English clubs. You can have the Juventus and maybe Inter Milan and Roma and stuff like Napoli and Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Seville, but really, and PSG, I suppose, but without the Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Spurs, I just don't think it's there. So I think the English clubs are key on that. So I really hope they talk to each other.
Yeah, Massimo, the rumor is 2021 might be the start of this thing. Obviously, it's we don't know any details yet, but what are your thoughts on this?
It's disgusting, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's horrible. And I think.
Before we go too far, I know it's disgusting. Not a lot of us like it, but we'd watch, wouldn't we?
Well, of course we'd watch it. If Arsenal were in it, you'd watch.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the thought of a pact amongst English clubs is like, a pact on the Titanic, where the poor people are trying to make a pact with the rich people, saying, "You definitely won't leave us, right?" It's incomprehensible that like the rich clubs, the top teams in the Premier League, wouldn't break away, because it would be suicide for them not to join in the Super League. And that's exactly why Arsenal are having these conversations, because the level they're at, they need to be at least part of the conversation. And somehow we've seemed to manage to bag ourselves one of these places where we can't get relegated, which I think is very handy at the moment. But it's a horrible idea. It's an elitist idea which would absolutely kill domestic football, and is probably geared up to cater to an Asian market where, you know, they just want the best of the best, and nothing in between. So
and they're willing to pay for it.
Exactly. It'll probably be sponsored by, you know, a Qatari superpower who just want this kind of crazy Super League with just the biggest names, irregardless of their form, which, you know, that's why there's no relegation or anything like that, because, you know, they don't want a season where United have one of their off seasons or Chelsea have one of their off seasons and then suddenly drop out of it, which is the case in the Champions League. They just want the biggest names, playing each other forever in some sort of, you know, rich man's hell. So yeah, I'm not behind it. I can see why Arsenal need to be involved in the conversations. But yeah, I hope to God it doesn't happen.
Okay. Chloe, your thoughts on this? Do you want to challenge Massimo at all, or are you on the same page with him?
No, I'm on completely the same page. And I agree, it just feels very elitist to me, and also feels as though it's finally making football an absolute commodity. It's all about the money, and I agree that I think it's important that Arsenal got visibility of what's happening. I do think it's been sort of interestingly positioned in the reports that I've read that kind of like we're at the table, but we're not sure whether we want to be there. And also not having the detail to understand what impact it would have domestically. You sort of have to make assumptions. But if you think about the history of football in this country, if you think about, you know, the magic that still exists when you are playing clubs like Everton, when you're playing clubs like Southampton, Crystal Palace, that is all part of being an English football fan and going to watch English football games. And I do think that it would just be, you know, disgusting is a really good word, actually, Massimo. I just think it would be the end of the end, for the fans, unfortunately.
I mean, Rick, you asked the question, we would still watch it. You know what? I'm not sure I would. I think that would actually completely turn me off football. I think it would be something that would really push me to the limit. And yeah, okay, fine. You know, would I still watch it maybe on TV a little bit? I don't know. But if I'm not going to games, then suddenly my interest isn't quite there. You know, I travel the country watching Arsenal, and it's one of, you know, the best feelings in the world when I'm not at a game, essentially because I've got something else on, or you know, I'm just sort of sick with the man flu, and I'm not there. It affects me. You know, I want to be there. I want to be singing. I want to be kind of supporting the team. I want to be, you know, with my mates doing what, in my opinion, I do best. And there's not much I do very well. So supporting my football club is probably one of them. So yeah, actually not being able to do that would probably send me over the edge. And I'm not sure I would be kind of, I think I'll fall out of love with the game. And if that happens, then would I watch it? Yeah, maybe initially. But then I think slowly but surely other things would start to come in my life where I would actually then think, oh, well, if I miss this odd game, it's fine. Especially because if we are thinking we'll cater for other markets across the world, what does that do for kickoff times? You know, our game's going to be played late at night. You know, we already have the League Cup. Sometimes they tried it last season and the draw was on like 4 a.m. or something stupid like that. And if we're suddenly going to have games that are like that early morning or interfere with your working day, then you might start to miss a few games, and then you just, you know, you would fall out of love and that interest would go. So I can really see that happening. I just, it will turn into just a franchise. It will turn into not real supporters kind of watching the clubs. It will just be kind of people in, you know, rich people in countries potentially. Yeah. Wanting to support players rather than teams. You know, you would start to see maybe, kind of people going to see particular players. And I think Arsene Wenger talked about that recently, about kind of, you know, Ronaldo and Neymar. Like, he didn't mention those two, but he said that there are some players who just have fans and people just want to watch those. Same way, you know, how Juventus increased their Twitter following when Ronaldo joined, because Ronaldo fans are now watching Juventus. And I think that could happen in this kind of a Super League as well, which means people like us, we just, you know, we don't matter anymore, and we just kind of lose our interest, and no one really misses us, which is very sad.
Yeah,
it's entertainment as well, isn't it? That it's actually becomes less about the game and it's more about providing entertainment that could be shown across the globe. And I think echo everything that you said, Akhil. I think for those of us that actually go and watch football live, there is a big risk that being in that kind of group with those teams, even the most enthusiastic supporters that travel abroad are not necessarily going to be able to make every game. And then suddenly, actually, you get to a point where the only option you've got is to watch it on the TV, and it is just not the same.
And then you'll have TV rights, and we've got Sky, we've got BT, we'll have Amazon next year. Suddenly, it could be quite expensive to watch it on TV as well. And I'm going to turn it around to you, Rick. Actually, I'm going to play host for the next minute. But I mean, you're obviously an American Arsenal fan. You're just as passionate. I mean, we have loads of conversations weekly about Arsenal, and I have no doubt the passion you share for the club is exactly the same as the passion I share, regardless of if you can watch games live or not. But obviously, kick-off times for you can be a little bit awkward. I remember when I was in America and there was one Arsenal game on. It was on at 4:30 in the morning on a Saturday because it was an early kickoff, and God, that was hard. I mean, it didn't stop me from having a few beers, but still, that's another story. Should have seen me by midday, mate. I was steaming. But, but generally, kickoff times, it's not a big thing to you because you're used to it. But I mean, how do you see the European Super League, and what will that do to you and your relationship with Arsenal if it was to happen?
Well, it is, you're right, it is different being over here. We're already only watching on TV or as it's becoming more commonplace, internet streams. But I don't know how much it would impact me watching the games because again, I'm already watching them remotely. But it would probably, and just for fans that go to games, it'd probably increase the price, right? The money grab is gonna be there. We're gonna have to pay to watch these games, so it's gonna impact fans everywhere, but probably less so for the people that aren't in Europe, that aren't going to the games. It's probably a smaller impact.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless of if you're watching it on TV or if you're there, when Arsenal go to Bournemouth or to Palace, there's something special about that. And I regardless of how you're watching it, and I just think, if you're playing the top teams every week. So at the moment, you think of our last kind of 20 years or so, there's certain games that kind of, the Barcelona at home and we beat them, or even away when we got really close, winning at Inter Milan, at AC Milan, those kind of games, Real Madrid in 2006. If you're getting those games every season, then the excitement for me goes. It's like, wow, Real Madrid away. That used to be a big game, but we do it every season now. Is it a big game? And for me, that will just, the games, even from your point of view, watching them, at whatever time, if the game aren't as competitive, and if fans in the stadium don't care if it's 4-3 to either team, they just want to see a big game, you lose that atmosphere. I'm sure, I know when you're watching it in your pubs, you can hear the English atmosphere because you often comment on that with me. The atmosphere was good, wasn't it? If that atmosphere goes, I would predict your interest will go. I mean, I might be wrong, but I believe.
Yeah, without the atmosphere, the entertainment value of watching the games does go down. Right? I mean, and this would be a big thing if there was a Super League, is particularly something I didn't think of, but you mentioned earlier, Akhil, away fans. Away fan support would dwindle quite rapidly because you can't afford to go traipsing all over Europe 3 weeks out of the month to watch your team, right?
Exactly.
I'll tell you why they might be encouraged by that idea and why they probably wouldn't be too put off by the idea of losing away fans. One, away fans probably account for a very small section. When you consider how many people are in the stadium, how many people watch the games, the away fans who actually go to the games are a very small percentage of the overall total, right? You've also got all the American sports leagues like NFL, NBA, even MLS. They don't really have away fans. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rick. But I spent a bit of time in America. America's too big even to have away fans of any significant sort of number.
That's true.
And it still works. It still sells out. You still get the atmosphere. So I think that is what will encourage the Super League, or the people behind the Super League will probably be thinking, do you know what? Do we need away fans? Like, they're a very small number to begin with of the total amount that see the game, and American sport still works perfectly well and is just as competitive and is probably more watched than anything else with that kind of format. So I think that's why, probably mistakenly, because I think from my experience of American sport live, that is one of the things that I massively missed when I was either at a soccer game or a baseball game or whatever, was that lack of away fans. And rightly or wrongly, they probably think that the loss of a couple of thousand people compared to the amount that you could add in, TV numbers and revenue subscribers or whatever is insignificant and is overcomable.
Yeah, I mean, they would. Go ahead.
No, go on. No, you go.
Okay. It's certainly attractive from a club standpoint because what they're going to see is fewer games, but more money. So they're not going to have, like this schedule we got coming up. We got games every 3-4 days coming up for the next 5 weeks. That probably wouldn't happen in a European Super League. There'd probably be fewer games, yet their revenues would increase. So, yeah, I can see why it'd be attractive to clubs, but it would rather destroy domestic leagues and reduce interest, I think. Like you said, Akhil, those matches would no longer be the spectacle they are today because they're happening 4 times a season every year instead of once every 3 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold there. I mean, yeah, that four times a season. I mean, do I get excited about Rangers versus Celtic? Not really. But football fans should. That should be something that should be watched all over the world because that's it's a big game in Scotland, but it's not because it happens so frequent. You feel like it's a big game again in Scotland. You don't really think, I definitely want to watch that. But the other thing I guess I was going to say was with football and certainly in England, but maybe that's the point. Maybe English fans actually, we're not sort of, we're not no one's going to consider us. But generally with football, we've always had that. You've always had those away fans, and yeah, away fans might only be 5 to 10%, but generally they're the loudest. They make the atmosphere. I'm sure TV companies absolutely love the away fans because that adds to the whole product. We're kind of like extras, but we pay to be extras. But if that was the case, I don't know what it would be like in Europe, because even in Spain, away fans, you often don't have away fans or huge numbers of them. So I don't know. It's hard to compare because when I was in America, I went to a basketball game. I watched the Golden State Warriors, and there again, it was probably 98% all home fans, and it was a good atmosphere, and I saw Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, and that was great. But it wasn't football. It just, I don't know, there's something special about our sport, and that's what I mean by if they lost that, I think they would they would be selling their soul anyway. But I just think over time, it might work for a few years, but over time, even the rich kids, would they actually want that? I don't know.
Yeah. Probably certainly wouldn't share the same passion. 10 years down the road, the fans probably wouldn't be nearly as passionate as they are when they can see the games down the road or across town or whatnot. Any more thoughts on the Super League? I think we all hate the idea.
Yeah. I mean, it would just kill. It would kill pub culture. It would kill, all that kind of stuff that happens. It was just, I'm desperate it doesn't happen.
And I think a lot of people know that this might be more of just a power play that the clubs are taking with UEFA.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's hope so. Anyway,
they want a bigger piece of the pie, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see. Back to Arsenal, our own leadership. Akhil, I should probably start with you. Raul and Vinay, how are they doing so far, and what do you see going on at the top ends of the club here?
Yeah, so it's been quite interesting. I met them both, and Vinay, actually, we invited him to. So we had every year we try and throw a bit of an event for our members at the Arsenal Supporters Trust. So last year we organised a screening of the '89 film in a cinema, and the AST paid for that. Ultimately members pay for that with their fees, but So this year we hired facilities at the football club. We had Bob Wilson do a Q&A. We had a really good raffle where we raised about £2,000 for the Arsenal Foundation, who do some absolutely fantastic work. And we also invited a few of the Arsenal directors. I mean, sadly, Raul was away in Europe doing some work, but Vinay came and, spoke to us, spoke to fans. He seemed like really enjoyed the evening as well. So, I think they've got big jobs. Arsenal has totally changed, from what we were a year or two ago. Ivan Gazidis has moved on. Arsene Wenger has obviously moved on. We now don't really have a manager. We have a head coach. We practically have a director of football. Ivan's role has been split into two a little bit. So Raul does everything on the pitch. Vinay does everything off the pitch. We've heard lots from them around kind of how they're going to change things. Raul has commented on kind of contract situation. I don't think he's a fan that we've let players like Aaron Ramsey kind of go into his final year. And even though Aaron Ramsey has said he wants to stay for the season because he sees something special in the club, from what I've seen of Raul, I think he'll be pretty keen to get some money for Ramsey this January if we feel that he's not going to be a part of the team. But I don't know, maybe the Welbeck injury might have just made it important that we might want to keep him. It might be more valuable to keep him. But generally, I think we'll see changes in contracts. I think we mentioned it earlier, but we've let players go, Wilshere, Santi Cazorla, there's that. You would have thought 4 or 5 years ago under Arsene and they probably would have stayed. Even with Ramsey, we had a contract on the table until probably Ivan left. So there are big changes there. I think they've got a big role. I think both understand that fan engagement is important. So yeah, let's kind of, it's one of those where you're kind of just letting them get on with it. Let's see what happens. We while we're doing well on the pitch, people don't worry too much. So, Stan Kroenke has actually just bought the whole club, yet no one's really talking about him because we're doing okay on the pitch and we're getting behind Unai Emery. So it's when things maybe go wrong, that's when that leadership will be questioned. But at the moment, it seems like it's going okay. Both guys seem like they're very, very smart, intelligent men doing, so far a good job. So, I think, the testing times are still to come.
So let me ask, since you're a lot closer to the club than I am, being over here in the States, the changes since Gazidis walked away, the potential political void or leadership void there. Do you think they've handled it? They know what they're doing. They know how to work together.
Yeah. I mean, it seems it. They've both said the right things. They've both said about how they work very closely. I think they knew each other before Arsenal as well. They sat on some sort of European board together. So, they're saying the right things. They both have offices, I think, at Highbury House and also the training ground. So yeah, we'll, they will be doing different things. So I think Raul's focus will certainly be on kind of January, contracts with Huss, who's our contract kind of negotiator. And by that we'll be looking at Czech, Welbeck, Monreal, things like that. So Raul's focus will very much be there and the next couple of transfer windows, whereas Vinay's might be a little bit more around the Super League conversations, around, I don't know, safe standing, ticket pricing, all that kind of stuff. So their focuses will be slightly different, but ultimately they'll be aligned. So yeah, no, I think they're doing, they've seemed like they've kind of, Vinay's been around a while. He has been in the club for about 6 or 7 years. Raul's obviously very new and only joined this year. So, one knows the club, one potentially doesn't. But, from everything I hear, they understand the values of the club, which is great. And if they understand the values of the club, they'll know that the European Super League is a big no-no. But I'm sure the next kind of 6 to 12 months will tell us more.
Yeah, they've certainly played their comments correctly on that they're simply being involved in the conversations.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments on Raul or Vinay?
I think the key for me is that in Raul we've got someone who's actually a big hitter from a football perspective, because obviously Gazidis, did a fantastic job in his role with us until he moved on, but he was a football man, but he was more about the business. And I think that sort of splitting out that role as we go forward is going to be a really positive thing to do. And when you think about his background at Barcelona, and he was quite a static force I think he was over there for about 10 years, wasn't he? But sort of behind the scenes, there was quite a lot of changes that were often happening throughout that period, yet he was a stable entity within the club. So I think it's good to feel that we've got somebody with that level of experience, understanding of football, actually in that position to help drive us forward, because it's definitely a new era, and it should be, because it was time for change. And what I'm finding really promising is that we're actually starting to see those changes in a relatively short space of time.
So let me ask this one, maybe to Akhil or Massimo, whoever wants to answer. If things start to go wrong and there's fan unrest and there's a lot of questions being asked, who do you think is going to step up to that microphone and address the questions being asked? Are they going to leave it to Emery, or is somebody going to step up?
I think they'll leave it to Emery. I think generally he'll be the public face and have a say on what goes on the pitch, and ultimately he will be accountable. I think he's taken to that role already pretty well. He fronts up and gives good detail about his team and his plans, probably more so than Wenger did. So I think he'll stand and face the music and face the questions if things do take a turn for the worst.
I think on the pitch stuff, Emery will. I still struggle to kind of get much out of Emery's interviews and press conferences. I don't think he's telling you anything really new. But maybe it's a language barrier as well, obviously, because he's speaking a completely different language. But I think when it's on the field, I think for sure Unai Emery will be the one to kind of talk. I think when it's stuff off the field, I think that's when it's going to be really interesting. I think Vinay will speak up a little bit. I think Raul kind of will be slightly more behind the scenes, I think. So I think Vinay, in sort of to answer your question, it might be more of Vinay. I think one thing we had with Arsene Wenger was he did go solo a lot, and he would go rogue. You could ask him absolutely anything and he would answer. And I remember when he was asked about safe standing, it was one of those things where we were asking Ivan about it for years and we never really got anything and we never really got a commitment. But, we kind of got a journalist to ask him and asked Arsene Wenger, and Arsene Wenger answered the question. He said he thinks it will be great. He thinks as long as it's safe, completely safe, it will be great. It could even reduce ticket pricing because you could have more people in and stuff like that. He went into lots of details, that sort of details that we kind of want from the club. I'm sure like Mark Canella in the comms kind of team and Ivan were probably thinking, oh no, Arsene, don't do this to us because fans are going to use this. And we did, we would then ask Ivan Gazidis question saying, well, Arsene Wenger's publicly backed it, will you? And do Arsenal back it? Sort of thing. So I'm not sure we'll get stuff like that from Emery. I think Emery will very much say that's not his role. When we talk about contracts, with the contracts, he says, I don't know, I'm not involved. My job is to get the best out of who I have and stuff like that. So I think it will be a little bit different. But time will tell. I think ultimately though, the things start going wrong, the anger will go back to the Cronkies. I think KSE will still get the brunt of the anger. I think Unai Emery will be given a lot of time. I even think Raul, with his experience and stuff he did at Barcelona, he saw off 3 presidents at Barcelona. People know he knows his stuff. Vinay's been with the club a while, and I think as long as we see a little bit of, normally when you're in a big role like this, you want to cut the quick wins, whether that's going to be freeze ticket pricing, whether it's going to be publicly to say we back safe standing, or we're paying our employees this, or no to a European Super League, a few quick wins, and fans kind of like you a little bit. But with the Cronkies, I think it's got a bit far that if it does go wrong, I think they'll get the anger.
Yeah, and it's an easy one. Easy target.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that should probably do it for the little interlull podcast. We've got to wait another week before we see Arsenal again at Bournemouth. What are your predictions, Akhil, for that game? Are you going?
Yeah, I am going. We lost there last year. We've had a few. Year before was the 3-3 actually, wasn't it? Bournemouth are playing well. Callum Wilson probably will score. I think hopefully the rest has done. Players like Ozil and Aubameyang. Lacazette didn't go, even though he was called up, which was obviously great, and that kind of highlights that his form as well. That he's back in the French fold. But he had a little groin injury, so he didn't go. I think we'll scrape it. I think we'll scrape it 2-1. I mean, Man United won there recently. It can be done. So yeah, I think we'll win it 2-1. I think it'll be tight though.
2-1. Okay, Chloe, are you going to the match, and what are your predictions?
I'm not going to Bournemouth, but I'm with you, Akhil. I think it will be 2-1 because I think we will concede. But having had a break, for those of them that have been on a break, I think we're just going to really go for it, come back fighting, and it's definitely got a win in it for me.
All right, and Massimo, is this? Are we going to see a better first half performance, or is it going to be back to the old ways?
I hope so, Rick. But I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough, and it will show a lot about where we are and how we're approaching games like this. Has it really changed, or have we just been seeing, paper over cracks so far? If we can win, I would consider that a very, very positive step under Emery so far. I'm not overly hopeful, but when Ozil has his 3-week breaks like he did before Leicester, he sometimes comes up and puts a performance in. It's never usually away from home, but let's hope.
Yeah, okay, and I was going to say 2-1 as well, but I can't agree with Akhil all the time, so I'm going to go 3-1 for Arsenal.
Fair enough.
Anyway, thank you all for joining us today. We certainly hope there's good things to come from Arsenal, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Up the Arsenal.
Thanks, everyone.